Welcome to Village Church. My name is Michael Chinchilla, and this is my friend Catherine, and we are here to welcome you. If you've been here 100 times, or this is your first time, welcome. We are in a very exciting time at our church where some of our sites are relaunching, and our site staffs are coordinating with venues, and they're trying to navigate COVID policies. And so we would ask if you would pray for us during this season, and if you're someone who actually wants more information about this, you could actually register for our newsletters at thisisvillagechurch.com/newsletters. And if you're the kind of person who just wants to serve with us and volunteer or any action steps from this service, you can go to thisisvillagechurch.com/next steps.
I am so excited to hear that some of our sites are finally starting to open up again. And I just want to let you know that our Village Kids and our Village Youth is still continuing to happen and will continue to happen as the sites continue to open up. So if you have any kids that anywhere from age kindergarten to age 18, I encourage you to check this online. It's gospel-filled content for your children, and you can go online and check that out. Let's continue to praise together.
My name is Rick Morris, and I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I had a lot of anxiety problems. I turned to alcohol. I turned to drugs. I got myself mixed up with the wrong crowd, committed adultery, did everything that I shouldn't have done. I knew I needed a huge change. I didn't know if I was ready for that yet. I was walking around angry all the time. I was never happy. It took me into a real dark place, and unfortunately, I didn't think that God could pull me out. At that time, I wasn't even considering God. After I really drastically slowed down on my alcohol intake and I cut out drugs for several years, I started finding it very hard and difficult to deal with my past and deal with my memories. And at the time, I didn't realize that it was the sin that I was trying to get rid of. And I tried forgiving myself for a few years. There was a lot of tears. There was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of anger still. I could not understand how to forgive myself until I started understanding more about Jesus and more about sin and more about forgiveness through the Bible, through church, through talking with Pastor Kevin. When I first met Kevin, I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit put off that we had a pastor on our football staff because I was volatile. I was outspoken, and I wasn't sure how that would work. The more that I spoke with Kevin, the more I realized that he is a really good person, very easy to talk to. I knew I could open up to him. The look on his face when I first walked up to him and I said, "Can I talk to you about God?" That's where our relationship really started to grow. I knew that the only way I was going to forgive myself was to open my heart to Jesus, and I could ask for forgiveness and he could forgive me so I could move forward. I would meet up with Kevin and we would go out and we would talk about the Bible and we would talk about things. It helped me want to know more. I never imagined myself wanting to know the Bible. The day I realized that I could turn to Jesus, the day I realized I asked for forgiveness and I could receive forgiveness, my entire life went from feeling like nothing to feeling like I was on top of the world. I feel completely different. My relationships with my kids are better. My attitude changed. Everything about what I do now, because of the fact I've decided to follow Jesus, has gotten better. I read in the Bible that you need to be forgiven and baptized by water. It was very important to me to be baptized.
I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
It cleansed me. It made me feel like my sins were washed away and I can move forward. I feel like the bad me has died and the pure me has risen. For so many years, the path I was on, it was like a winding road, and there was ups and downs and ups and downs. If somebody would have told me 10 years ago that I would be sitting here today talking about God, I would have said there's not a chance. But of course, God had a different path for me, and he brought people in my life that needed to be there. Village itself has given me an absolute second family. I am now part of a community group that meet every Tuesday night. The people there are fantastic. The doors that Village has opened for me through watching it online and through being part of it here in Winnipeg has changed my life. And anytime I think about my past, anytime I think about driving through the city, I see houses I used to party in. Anytime I do, I think of Jesus and I talk to him and I thank him for the forgiveness. And I am so looking forward for the years to come because I can't wait to keep learning and just experience life like this, because this is the greatest life you could live.
praise my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art, how great thou art, how great thou
Hey, Village Church, so glad that you are with us. Pastor Mark here. Thanks for joining us from all over the world. We're super excited that you are part of this church online, but also we have exciting news for our physical locations that gather in Canada. The Calgary site, you guys get to actually gather today. This is your first day of gathering, July 4th. In person, of course, you've texted and registered, and there's a certain amount of people at certain times, and this is the way we're doing it 2 weeks from now on July 18 at our greater Vancouver area sites. All of those sites, other than our Surrey site, is able to gather physically, in person. There's certain restrictions going on. You have to, text in and say, I'm coming and all of that. So hopefully you're on the newsletter. We know you're coming, you register, but we're super excited. This is a great first step, and we're working with the Ministry of Education around the Surrey site, the Bell Center site, in order to get in there as soon as possible as well. So stay tuned if you attend that site. Super exciting though. What a moment. We get to start to regather, and hopefully that just continues to grow and grow and grow. So God bless you guys. So glad you're with us. John chapter 5. We are now in chapter 5. Let's go. Here's the thing. It's a brand new section. So the way that scholars usually break up the Gospel of John, they say chapter 1 to chapter 4 is one section, and now we're in another section that runs from chapter 5 to chapter 11, and we're going to see some really cool things. In fact, a lot of scholars, and as I've reflected on chapter 5, I begin to realize more and more that it's one of the more interesting, one of the more important chapters in the whole Bible. We're going to see in a week or two one of the most important sermons in the entire New Testament that Jesus ever gives. One of the deepest, most compelling sermons is in this chapter. But there's something that happens to set all of that up. And it has to do with who Jesus is, his identity. And I realized this is such an important question, and here's what I mean by it. So 2 nights ago, my daughter wants to go down to, there's a beach near our house, and she's meeting some friends for a little birthday party, all COVID, regulations intact. And I drop her off, and I leave, and then I come back to get her. And I pull up, and I'm listening to some sappy, sentimental country song, all right? Just like, and I want my dog back and my boyfriend's, but whatever it was, I don't even remember what it was. And I'm sitting there feeling all sentimental, and I'm pumping this music. I got my windows down, and I'm kind of a closet. Like, I don't tell people I'm like the sappy country sentimental guy, but sometimes it grabs my heart. And I'm like doing this thing, and I realize my windows are down, and there's a whole bunch of like cool people, walking toward my car. And I realize I just turned the music all the way down. And I realized at that moment, I'm embarrassed by this, all right? And I'm like, who am I really? If I really like this, why don't I just tell the world? Why am I hiding this? Why am I turning down this like sappy country song? I should be like, yo, players, what's up? But I don't. And this is all of us. We hide stuff, right? We're afraid to kind of tell the world who we really are because we think there's going to be a negative reaction. We think people are going to criticize us. We think people are going to sell us out. We think people are going to do all of these things. And that is literally what begins to happen to Jesus now. He is about to commit a crime. And this crime, this moment, even though we don't really see it when we start to read it, what we begin to realize is what is about to happen in Jesus' life. He's about to commit a crime that then leads to a trial where people start to say, let's put him on trial. We got to actually think about that. We got to put this guy away. We're going to end up killing this guy. So this is where CSI begins in the Gospel of John, right? This is Law and Order now. Now, we don't see it because it's so innocent what he's about to do, but it's super scandalous. So here we are. Let's jump into it. John chapter 1. Here's what happens. After this, meaning what had gone on in chapter 4, there was a feast of the Jews. Now, one of the things we have to understand is now, starting in chapter 5, we're going to hit a whole bunch of feasts, a whole bunch of celebration points, a whole bunch of moments in the Jewish calendar. There's a whole bunch of feasts. And what we're going to see is John starts to lay them out. We get a feast in chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7 to 8, chapter 9, and chapter 10. all the major feasts of Judaism now come into play, and Jesus does something around them in that moment in order to create like a shock wave to go through the culture. He is about to throw grenades in the culture because he wants to take all of these symbolic meals that mean stuff. See, most of us Gentiles, we're walking around, we don't have like, the closest thing we have to this is like a Christmas or an Easter dinner or something where we have symbols, stuff you don't even know why it happens anymore, right? You're like, why do I fill this? Like, I remember when I got married. So my mom used to fill up our, we had these stockings, they were about that big. And it was mostly like toothpaste and, certs or whatever. Like it was all just this random, whatever. And then you'd get to your gifts and I'd have like a couple random gifts, like a shirt or whatever. And then I get like one big gift. That was like an $80 gift or something growing up. I was like, okay. So then I got married and, my wife started to, civilize me and make me learn things about the way things should be. And all of a sudden our stockings were this big and they were filled with all this like real gifts. So then I had to learn, oh my gosh, I can't just buy, a pack of Halls for my wife on Christmas and stick it in the stocking. It's got to be thought through. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. And then everything's individually wrapped, supposed to be in this stocking. Oh my gosh. So then we started to do this, and then the kids don't just get that, but then they get this, and then they all need the same thing. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And so you begin to go, why do we do that? Why stockings? Why trees? Why are we putting up trees and leaving them there for 9 months? All of these little things that we do where we try to set it exactly nostalgic as we grew up or whatever, they all have these meanings. And the Jews are embedded in this kind of symbolic reality in their life. And they have feasts to celebrate what God has done throughout history. And Jesus is going to walk into all those feasts and he's going to just start blowing them up. He's going to start to say, here's what's crazy. Hey, the Passover feast? Hey, this feast, that feast? All of these are actually about me. They were all pointers to me. You think when you get together and celebrate the Feast of Passover, do you think the blood of that little lamb that you spilled and you put it over your doorpost and the wrath of God passed over you, Israel, do you think that was it? Do you think that little thing could actually take care of the sin of the world? No. Don't you understand? It was all a pointer to me. My blood is going to be shed as the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. That's what this feast is really about. That's what every story all through your history, Feast of the Jews, is really about. It's all been pointing to me. So the stage is set. He walks in, it's Times Square, New Year's Eve, right? And Jesus walks into Times Square in New Year's Eve and he grabs the mic away from Dick Clark or whoever's leading the thing. It goes, check it, play us. Let's go. I have something to say. So we just read that little phrase. We're like, Feast of the Jews, must be nice. That's what's going on, all right? So he says, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. So Feast of the Jews, he's about to do an act that's going to turn everybody toward recognizing, because he's going to heal a guy, not to spoil the story, heal a guy and it's on the Sabbath and they don't like it. And what I love about this, just to get in our brains, is he's about to do something at 30,000 feet, guys, where he's going to love someone even though it's going to cause him pain. He's about to love on a guy and change his life, a guy completely paralyzed. And everyone's going to turn on him and it's going to become a crime drama about this act because it's done on the Sabbath during a feast of the Jews. Super conservative culture. You're not supposed to break any of the laws. You're not supposed to break any of the rules. And Jesus punches through the rules in order to get relationship, and they hate him for it, but he does the right thing. And this is what we are called to do, guys, to do the right thing, even if it's going to cause us pain, because the painful way is oftentimes the harder way. What are those scenarios in your life? This is people putting Anne Frank and her family in the walls during World War II to hide them from the Nazis. My hope is that we are the kinds of people who would do that too. We don't live in fear, and I know we all look back and think we would be that family, but would you? Are you Bonhoeffer during the Nazi, where you're saying, I'm gonna stand up against Nazi regimes and all of this stuff and preach Jesus? Or am I gonna fall into the political realities of the world and compromise? Jesus is willing to do the hard thing because it's the right thing and it's the loving thing, even though it's gonna go bad for him. This is what's beautiful about Jesus. And I'm a little obsessive like this myself because sometimes I can't, even in my social world, I can't just if people are saying something and it's not right, I can't just sit there and just can't keep eating. I'm like, wait a minute. Like I was on a guy's trip a little while ago and someone was talking something about some nonsense conspiracy theory. And I just couldn't sit there. I'm like, nope, that's not a thing and then it's like, wah, and everybody's fighting. I'm like, I can't just we gotta talk about this thing, even though it might be harder. We gotta try to get to this. And of course, everyone's trying to do that. And that's the heart behind all these debates. And it's like, can we lean into one another in love and actually pull these things out, or are we just gonna sit and let opportunities go by? Here's Jesus going, I'm gonna take the hard route, and it's gonna come back, and people are gonna put me on trial for it. It's actually a beautiful moment. So Jesus goes up to Jerusalem. Now, he goes up to Jerusalem because what would happen, every male within 15 miles of Jerusalem, 3 times a year, would actually have to go up to Jerusalem for these particular feasts. So you have Passover, Tabernacle, and Pentecost. These are the things that Jews in that time would actually have to go up to Jerusalem 3 times a year if you lived within 15 miles. And it says, now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. So let me just start with this. Those of you who are skeptics about Christianity, this is a great verse for you, because so here's what happened for 200 years post-Enlightenment. People would look, and there'd be lectures at Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard and Yale about why the Bible can't be trusted. And one of the reasons for you skeptics was this verse right here. What they said is that John has no bearing in historicity. He's making things up so much that he's just making up geographic regions that don't exist. And they would cite this verse as one of the great reasons you should all drop kick your Bible and walk away from it and never trust it again, because this simply didn't exist. There was no pool by the sheep gate in a place called Bethesda, which had 5 roof colonnades. These pillars and these porches didn't exist. And people would walk away from Christianity and say, I can't trust the Bible. But then here's the problem. In the mid-1900s, archaeologists continued to dig, and they dug a little deeper. And just north of the Temple Mount, they found exactly this set of pools and porches and colonnades. Inscriptions, exact spot, exact name. And what's terrifying about that is everyone who walked away from Christianity based on that skepticism, all they needed to do was wait a little longer till they dug a little deeper. There's a guy named Craig Blomberg, who's a very respected New Testament scholar. He has an entire 400-page book called The Historicity of the Gospel of John. And what he points out is there's lots of people through history that put John through the ringer for not being historical. And actually, he's one of the most historical of all of them. For instance, John is the only reason we know Jesus' ministry lasted 3 years. It's the only one. If we don't have John, we don't know how long he went, because John tells us how many times he went to Jerusalem for the Passover. That's the only way we're able to gauge how long Jesus' ministry was. If all you have is Mark, his ministry could have lasted 2 weeks. We have no idea. And so John tells us it's 3 years, it's this many feasts, it's this many times he went to Jerusalem, and he roots this thing in this historical place. So I say that to you because I don't want you to drop kick your Bibles and walk away from Christianity. If that is the reason that you haven't believed in Jesus yet, I want to tell you, you can fully trust the Bible. You, in some sense, you're looking at data that's outdated, and you're not hitting the right information if you think the Bible can't be trusted. It's like my daughter and I, so we're watching these movies I was telling you guys. I'm trying to show them some of my favorites. So for about 2 months, I was like, hey guys, I'm really excited for you to watch a couple of these movies. So one of them is called Batman Begins, and it's going to be legit. And they kind of rolled their eyes. I'm like, I don't really get why you're rolling your eyes. This is like amazing. And then I'm like, another movie I want you to watch is Meet Joe Black. And they're like, okay, I mean, both these don't sound all that interesting, but whatever. So I'm like trying to grind. Come on, let's watch it. Let's watch Batman Begins. So finally they're like, fine. So we sit down and turn on Batman Begins, and the title comes up. And one of my girls stops and she goes, okay, hold on. This movie's called Batman Begins? This looks incredible. I'm like, it's life-changing. She goes, Dad, for the last 6 months, I thought you were pitching me a cartoon movie called Batman Muggins. I'm like, who would want to watch Batman Muggins? She's like, I don't know, but the way you said it, you would always say Batman Begins. Batman Begins. You want to come watch Batman Begins? And she's like, I didn't want to watch a movie called Batman Muggins. And she's like, what are these other movies you want me to watch? This is incredible. I'm like, well, what about this? And what about that? What about Meet Joe Black? She's like, hey, wait. Spell that for me. So I'm like, Meet Joe Black. She's like, I thought you were saying Micho Black. It was like a wrestler from Mexico that we wanted, that Micho Black. And I wasn't in like a biography of Meet Joe Black. See, dealing with the wrong information, you could actually get a bad result. So I want to give you the good information, all right? Biblical archaeologists and scholars are guys who run museums are like, we're in awe of how legitimate the Bible is historically. The Gospel of Luke, you can't go a chapter without him citing certain rulers and leaders that existed at a particular time, to the point where you're like snoring because he keeps trying to root his story in history. This guy was a procreator that, and this guy was the Syrian leader, and all of a sudden rooting it in history. In fact, the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts, within it, Luke identifies 32 countries, 54 cities, and 9 islands without error, according to geography that existed at the time. And even now that's looked back, everything Luke cites as a historian is actually legitimate. From an archaeological standpoint, a guy named Nelson Glueck, he's a renowned Jewish archaeologist. He says this: it may be stated categorically that no archaeological discovery has ever contradicted a biblical reference. Think about that for a second. Out of the hundreds, thousands of references the Old and New Testament make about kings and leaders and locations and numbers and places, nothing has been proven as that is objectively false, made up, a lie. The Bible is vindicated over and over and over again. So, what does he do? So basically, I just want to take that moment and go, you got to make sure that you don't walk away from Christianity for the wrong reasons. You can trust the Bible, and John is a great historian that's saying the New Testament over and over is validated by history, archaeology, philosophy. It's something, if you're a skeptic, you got to lean in and allow John to do his work on you and not be fazed or distracted by this false narrative that used to go around that John wasn't a trustworthy historian. So then it says this, in these, meaning these porches and around this pool, in these lay a multitude of invalids. All right, so blind, lame, and paralyzed. All these people are laying around. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. So picture this now, 38 years, this invalid, a guy in the Greek, he's paralyzed, has been sitting there by this pool 38 years. That's older than me. I was born about 3 years. So if you retract backwards, I'm 40 now. 1983, from 2021, 1983. So Return of the Jedi comes out. All right? Now I'll just riff it off the top of my head here. Okay, Return of the Jedi comes out. That's how long this guy's been sitting there. From Return of the Jedi's release date till now, 1983 until now. Have you done anything since then? Like, moved? Have you got out of bed? Have you gone to a move? Have you gone and taken a shower? Have you done anything in your life? Think about this guy's absolute poverty of spirit and life and hatred toward God. And I mean, why did you do this to me? Why am I sitting here this long? So there's picture in a world without hospitals and medicine, the way you would blind, lame, paralyzed, all sitting, just hundreds of them by this pool. One of the historical commentaries tells us that the reason they would sit by this pool is because there was an aqueduct running underneath it, and once in a while it would bubble up, and there was this mythology around an angel would come and stir it up, and if the first one who could get in, they'd be healed. So everyone's around there wanting to be healed. Jesus walks up to that very place. And let me just say this, I'm gonna talk about healing for a little bit, but let me just, before I do that, because most of you watching this are probably, fine in body, maybe. I see myself in this story, and it's very important that we don't always see ourselves as Jesus in these stories. I know that's what we tend to do, like, let me be Jesus and go heal the invalids. You're the invalid in this story, okay? You're the blind, the lame, the sick, the spiritually. You got sins about your life. You got worldliness. You are paralyzed emotionally, physically, relationally, whatever, spiritually, whatever it is. Like, see yourself in this story as the one who needs Jesus, not as the one who's going to be Jesus. Right? It's a very important distinction. We need Jesus in this moment. How many of us are sitting there not effective in our life because we have sins and habits and worldliness, and we're just paralyzed by fear or our past or whatever? I've been through those moments in my life. I mean, COVID has been a especially hard moment for so many people, paralyzed in fear. They're saying statistically, what we're going to see in the next year is more people quitting their jobs than we've ever seen, because people are having existential crises right now. Am I the mother I'm supposed to be? Am I the business leader I'm supposed to be? Am I the friend have I been the, and we're in this like tumult, just this crazy, we don't know what to do. It's all cloudy and misinformation. And we're like, we don't know, we haven't seen someone physically for so long that we're gonna start quitting jobs and making lifelong decisions, some of which will be bad, some of them will be good, some of them will be bad. We all have these moments. And the answer to those moments isn't just reading a book and getting a good podcast and trying to work your life out and figure out. The answer to that is Jesus. That's how your paralysis will end. That's how maybe it's spiritual blindness or that needs to actually be lifted from your life, where you haven't trusted Jesus yet. You don't understand the gospel yet. You're still working out of religion or another religion or atheism or agnosticism. And the blindness, as Paul says, when you're in that state, it's not that you just haven't done enough information. Paul says there's a blindness spiritually that's going on in your life that Jesus can heal and touch and save and transform and set us all free from. And so, now, many scholars have pointed out that this guy was in the worst scenario you could basically be, because here he is sitting in this pool and Jesus leans into him, right? We're gonna see, look at this. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he'd already been there for a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" Now, of course, he's gonna heal him in a sec, but here's what I love. Jesus looks at the guy who's been lying there for a long time and he moves toward him, not away from him. The followers of Jesus move toward the unloved ones, the ones without the friends, right? The ones who are marginalized, the ones who need to be encouraged. Think about that for your own life at any age and stage you're watching this. This might be your high school student and you got the kid who's always made fun of and they don't have any friends. Do you lean in or away because they're not part of the cool crew? If you're an adult at the party, do you lean in or away from the people who is the uncool one? Maybe the one, it's hard to hang out with people who are struggling, isn't it? It's easier to go through the ones who have arrived, who are doing well, because they don't drag you down with their emotional baggage. And here's Jesus doing the opposite. He leaves the ones who might just be blind, and he moves toward the guy who has paralysis for 38 years. 38 years. This is a move of justice toward the marginalized. And what we get wrapped up in today is we're like, Jesus was a man of justice. I can't believe. Listen, Isaiah says in Isaiah chapter 1, Isaiah says, listen, if you don't take care of the poor and the widows and the marginalized and the broken and the unloved, God doesn't even hear your prayers. And we get all wrapped up in modern Christian. We're like, oh, well, maybe he should have got a job, make something of his life. What about critical race theory? And God in heaven's like face palming us, going, oh my gosh, take care of the unloved. This is compassion. This is the way of Jesus. Jesus was the one who leaned in, loved on. There's a guy, Dr. Dwight Peterson. He gives us a beautiful picture of what this scenario would have been. He talks about how the word invalid would have been a paraplegic back then. And so Dr. Dwight Peterson gave a lecture at the Society of Biblical Literature years ago, and he himself is a paraplegic. And here's what he said from the microphone in very stark detail. He talked about how the problem back then wasn't just social. If you were paraplegic, the problem he graphically describes as you would have no bowel or bladder control. You have no way to clean yourself up. You're a paraplegic. You can't move. So think about your scenario. You stink. You're disgusting. You have stuff all over you from going to the bathroom over yourself all the time. And Jesus starts talking to the guy nobody's talking to anymore. He starts loving on the guy nobody's loving on anymore. I love this. And can I say something, not to take like a shrewd angle to this? Do you know how to get ahead in life? Stop thinking about you and start thinking about the people around you and like make conversations about them. Ask that, like, look at Jesus. I mean, this is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Principle number 1. Do you want to be healed? You know what everyone thinks about? Themselves. Jesus asks a question. You know, if you're in a relationship with someone and you've been hanging out for, 10 years and they never ask you about you, how you're doing, what's going on in your life, it means they're a narcissist. It means all they care about is themselves. And the problem with people like that is, over time, where do they go in life? They've done studies on this. At parties, people think the most interesting people are the people who aren't even talking about themselves. They're people asking the people at the party about themselves. Everyone loves to talk about their own story. Lean into other people. Ask them questions about them. Get into what they do for a living. Make sure that you're because that is how people feel encouraged. That's how people feel affirmed. And here's Jesus actually, rather than just being in it for themselves. My buddy tells me a story which is just a great illustration of the opposite of this. He has this staff of about 10 people, and they run this company. And he had bought a new car, a beautiful new car, and a pretty expensive car. And he's like, hey, everybody, just so you know, we're all clear. I got this new car, and I know all of you want it. It's a really nice car, and fair enough. And he has this business owner that he owns this business with. And the two of them, let's call this guy David. David runs this company with him. So my buddy gets this new Range Rover, and he's like, hey, everybody, love my new Range Rover. And if we all together, you guys have worked really hard this year. And if we all work super hard this year, like stay late, make sure we're doing everything we can, David will also be able to get a Range Rover. Like, this is the most unmotivating speech in the history of a company, all right? It's like, if you bust your rump, we can benefit, all right? Not what Jesus is doing. Do you want to be healed? Can I serve you in some way, even though I'm the God of the universe? flip that in your mind. We're talking about the identity of Jesus at the beginning, who he's revealing God to be. You know, John 1 told us that in Jesus we see God. He unveils, the veil gets pulled back and he goes, I'm God. All through history, you serve God. You can't even look. And here's God comes down into flesh and then starts asking, how can I serve you? And I love this question, do you want to be healed? Obviously, the answer is yes, but here's what Jesus is saying. I want you to do your part. Meaning, are you just happy after 38 years eking out an existence, sitting around doing nothing? Or if I heal you, are you going to pick up your mat and let's go? Let's do something with your life. Because we all have that. The sovereignty of God at some point hits the responsibility of humankind. And there comes a moment where Jesus goes, do you want to do this? Because if I give you this opportunity, are you going to do something with it? Right? We have choices to make. And God's not going to overthrow those choices and save you from yourself, which is why you need wisdom. Well, whole books in the Bible are wisdom literature. Why? Why? If God is just going to make everything happen, then I don't need to be wise. But God goes, I need you to understand how to make choices for yourself at whatever age and stage you're at. In my devotions right now, I'm going through 1st and 2nd Samuel. You get to 1 Samuel, and you see Samuel saying, do this, do this. Saul goes, takes it into his own hands. God's like, dude, now there's an implication you're not going to be my king anymore. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to do that. No. I told you not to do something. You did it anyway. So you know what God does? He steps aside. He says, okay, go ahead. And you reap the destruction of the derailment of your own life because of it. There are choices we make. And the question Jesus is asking is, if I heal you, are you just going to go through the rest of your life playing the victim? Are you just going to blame everybody else? I mean, look at his initial reaction. The sick man answered, sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water's stirred up. Now, I'm not busting his chops. Obviously, that's a tough situation. But for you and me, let's look into that little phrase. I have no one to put, no one. I'm going to blame the world. And Jesus goes, I just don't want, fair enough. I just don't want you to do that going forward. Look, I got a past, me personally, on paper, it's the kind of past that would result in maybe not good things for a young man. I don't know if I'm a young anymore, strong, I'm 40. I grew up in, just like not middle class, under that, in a town pretty rough. It's not, certain parts of the world, but, my aunt was schizophrenic and she took her own life. My dad was an alcoholic who just couldn't keep a job. He was kind of useless. And all I grew up listening to is my mom and him fight and yell and scream. And the pictures of my father, as I've shared before, are him sitting, watching TV, smoking a pipe, watching MASH, and yelling at football games. And CFL too, so if that's football. So it's like, go Argos. So it's like, I remember, and then they divorced when I was like 7, 8 years old and got Tourette syndrome and obsessive compulsive disorder out of that trauma, as I've shared many times. But when you're a young kid and you randomly say swear words at people, you're in school, you're making, doing things, that's weird. Like one of my habits growing up was giving the middle finger. Like they might have to fuzz this out. I'm not really sure what the church censorship is on this. Like if you got a PG-13 this, but literally one of my things was like doing this. So when you're like, when people turn around and they're like, you're sitting at a bus stop and you're like this, some guys all be like, this might not go good for you. That's all I'm saying. Like, how do you grow up and that ends up being okay? How do you end up normal when you're set up in this scenario where really I could be sitting here right now saying, my circumstances, my parents, my mental illness, all of this stuff, I get to blame the world for my stuff, but then I had to sit up and make some choices about my life. The first one of which was, Jesus, take me, heal me, do something in my life, transform me, push me in a way, and I needed his help. But another piece of it was my responsibility every day to wake up and make the choices that God was asking me to make. And I have a million of them, just like you, every single day. And I don't sit here today as any form of success or anything. I'm just saying I'm not a total disaster. I mean, I'm 90% disaster without Jesus, but I've been able to, because of the hard work and choices and getting up every day and saying, I got to do this. And this is the challenge for all of us, not to blame our circumstances or our past and the situation, because we're all going to have issues and problems and difficulties in our life. We're going to have stuff where we're just, it's not good. My marriage is bad. My job situation is bad. I got that diagnosis. It's bad. And the question is, if Jesus comes along and reaches out to you and says, let's go and do something, will you meet him halfway? Will you say, okay, I will do this. Let's go. Or will you just blame the world and do nothing with your life? See, we have to see those down moments as an opportunity for God to show up and for you to change the direction of your very life. The down moments, the moments where it looked like it was all over, total darkness, total shift, can't go anywhere, don't know where it's gonna go, then, okay, so I was reading this story the other day. There's this famous writer, Nathaniel Hawthorne. He was in city politics. He lost his seat in city politics. He was totally devastated. He comes home to his wife, totally depressed. I lost my seat. My life's a disaster. He had sat down. He was depressed for like 2 days. And his wife, instead of leaning in and doing what we do to each other, which is just enable each other and rub each other's backs and say, I'm so sorry. And we never, just go, hey, why, let's do. Instead of enabling, here's what she did. One writer writes this of his story. Instead of indulging his irrational hysterics, not that we ever do that, she kindled a fire, brought him his pen, ink, and paper, laid her hand on his shoulder and said, now you can write your book. This is an opportunity to turn it all around. And like a magic spell, his face turned. He set to work, forgot his loss, wrote and amassed a fortune. Wrote a little book called The Scarlet Letter. I don't know if you ever heard of it. If you've been through high school, you probably have, and you're like, no, The Scarlet Letter. One of the great novels in American literature, because the guy got fired and he was in a tough spot. God is doing something not just in the great times. God shows up when you're sitting there paralyzed and blind and lame and not knowing where to go. This is Paul in Philippians 1. He's in jail. I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. Verse 12. What? How? No. Getting arrested and beaten and going starving and thrown into jail is not an opportunity for the gospel, Paul. That's an opportunity for Satan to show how he's in control of all things. That's just bad. That's nothing but bad. Nothing good can come of being in jail and beaten and hungry. God only shows up. This is how we think. I'll show the world that God is good by how good my life is. That surely will advance the gospel. How comfortable I am, how successful I am. Look at my photos. Everyone's going to go, oh my goodness, look at their perfect life. Give me Jesus. My suffering is an opportunity to advance the gospel. That's what Paul says in Philippians chapter 1. My suffering, the bad times, maybe for some of you, this moment. I was reading Tim Keller, who's a pastor in New York City, great writer, great thinker, was a pastor for 30 years in New York. Now he's diagnosed with cancer that they say is terminal in some way, maybe 2 or 3 years to live. And he said in a podcast I listened to, in an article I read recently, he said, and this is crazy, I wouldn't trade this. I wouldn't want to go back to my lack of intimacy with Christ that I had before I had this diagnosis. Wouldn't trade it for the world. Come on. How is that even possible? Those of us who've not been to the brink have no idea the sweetness of Christ. That once you taste it, you don't want to go back to the good times. A guy named Thomas Vincent, years ago, on his day before he died, he was a great thinker, wrote a treatise on loving God, one of the only books on loving God I've ever read, and it blew my mind. But the night before he passed away, here are the words that Thomas Vincent wrote. Hasten, oh, hasten, death. Where's your bow? Where are your arrows? Come, come, come. I am yet in the body. I am yet on earth, but it is in heaven. Heaven, heaven I would gladly be. I seek death, but cannot find it. How long, O Lord, holy and true? He said to his physician, why do you come to keep me out of heaven? Dear Jesus, come and take me away. I have no business here. My work is done. My hourglass has run out. My strength is gone. Why shall I stay behind? Oh, come. How long shall I wait and cry? How long shall I be absent from you? Take me to yourself. Give me possession of that happiness which is above, the vision of yourself, full fruition of yourself without any interruption or end. Dear Jesus, how long before you send your chariots, come down to me and take me up to you? The next day he's gone. The sweetness of knowing Christ, the beauty of it, that is in the grip of the squeeze, the grating, the difficulty is where you find the sweetness. It's where you find the opportunity for the advancement of the gospel. Those moments of suffering and difficulty that we're all in some way, but some of you at different levels, they make us pay attention. Right? They make us pay attention. Like they get our attention in a way that sometimes we go through life and we're just not paying attention to the right things. I'll try to give you a little example. Yesterday morning, on Saturdays, I usually like to sleep in, right? So sleeping in to me is like, maybe 9 o'clock, sleep in, get up, have some routine, but it's Saturday. I get to sleep. I know I got sermon work later on, and it's just a day to chill and sleep in. So yesterday morning, I woke up and, I sat there for 20 minutes, but I was brain awake. Don't look that up. I don't know if that's scientific, but I was awake in my brain, and I knew I wasn't going back to sleep. And it's so bright right now. It's June, so it's bang. It's like bright, and I hear the birds. I just want to, anyway, kill birds. But there's the birds, whatever. So I get up and I go to the bathroom. I brush my teeth, and I grab my phone. I go downstairs into the kitchen, and I put on my coffee maker. Do coffee, go to my chair, sit down, do some reading, sit in my chair, drink half my coffee. Now I'm like, wired, ready to go get a second cup. And I look up at the clock for the first time. I look up at the clock for the first time in the day. I realize I have not looked at the clock yet. I look up, it's only 6:30 in the morning. I've lived half the day already. Buddy, I'm already, getting lunch ready. And I look up, it's only 6:30. I'm like, buddy, pay attention. Sometimes we just coast through life. We're drinking coffee, we're sitting reading, and we don't know what reality is. And sometimes it's in those moments that Jesus uses to get our attention to the good stuff, to the stuff we weren't paying attention to, and to the stuff that will ultimately advance the gospel. So what happens to this guy? Let's get to it and end this way. Help me. The water gets stirred up. No one is here to help me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I'm going, another steps down before me. Jesus said, Get up. I love this. And boom. I would love this kind of power. Lord, give it to me. Get up. It's like, wait, this line is like, this is, in the Greek, it's the same thing I say to my kids every morning, right? When they're laying in bed. It's less godly when I say it, but it's get up, right? That's what get up. You invalid sitting in your own stink and disgustingness. This is actually the same Greek word for resurrection. Get up. It's time to live a resurrected life now. Take up your bed and walk. And at once the man was healed. And he took up his bed and walked. How beautiful is this moment? Can I say something? There's a few things I could take out of this. I mean, first, it's just, guys, Jesus was a healer. Even to the people writing during that time in the first century who didn't believe in Jesus, Tacitus, Suetonius, Pliny the Younger, Josephus, they were writing history about Jesus at about that time, and they talked about Jesus, and one of the categories they had, other than parabolist, was healer. They didn't even deny the fact that Jesus healed people. Even from a historical, skeptical, super liberal view of Jesus, he healed people. Actually healed people. I love it on so many levels. He loves to help. He loves to serve. He has compassion. He didn't just go through life doing his own thing and say, let me give you some teachings and move. He healed. And he would restore. And they would die again, sure. But the point of it was a symbol. It was bigger than just, I helped you in this moment, a few Band-Aid healings. He only did, the Gospels record 36 healings, separate healings. There's these moments where it says he did a lot more stuff that we're not telling you about. But if you take Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, 36 separate healings are made. So, which is actually fascinating to me, because why didn't he do more than that? If he did 3 years of ministry, that's like 10 a year on average. So I wrote this in The Problem of Jesus. I can't say it any better, so I just figure I'd read it to you. We shouldn't miss the fact that there aren't more miracles in Jesus' ministry. After all, he could have done as many as he wanted. Why 36 when he could have done so many more? Why so few? I think it's because Jesus knows something we know but refuse to embrace, that in life, there are no easy, quick answers. When we face demons in our lives, the answer most often is not deliverance, but discipleship. That porn addiction or shopping addiction doesn't just disappear overnight. It takes time and hard work. Narrow is the road that leads to life, and only few find it. The road to transformation is tough. It's not felt in a power encounter or a flashy instant for many of us, but hard fought in the dark when no one is looking, on our knees amid sweat, tears, and confusion. But don't despair, God is there. I think that's the majority of our situations in life, and discipleship is the way out of it, not deliverance encounters that are a guy dressed up in a spacesuit going, and then all of our problems are gone. It's the getting up and walking. It's the daily grind every day after the healing that we see in this guy. So can I just take another angle on this too? This is not a faith healing. That's what I love about this. Okay, so for those of you, I'm an equal opportunity offender. All right, so meaning, depending on the text, I offend liberals and conservatives. All right, they both get mad at me, I get it. Email me at johnbroadhead@thisisvillagechurch.com. I'll read all of those. The Baptists get mad when I say I believe in tongues. All right, the Presbyterians get mad when I say I believe in healings and deliverance. The Charismatics get mad when I push against what I'm about to push against right here. Everyone gets mad at me when I say I don't believe in the rapture. The reality is this, okay? The reality is this. This guy didn't stir up faith and believe if he could just have enough faith, he would believe in Jesus. In fact, you ready for this? He didn't even know who Jesus was. Wait, what? Listen to the later verses that we're going to hit next week. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who'd been healed, "It's not lawful for you to take up your bed." But he answered, "The man who healed me," That man said to me, take up your bed and walk. They said, who's the man who said, take up your bed and walk? Now, the man who had been healed did not know who it was. Verse 13. Mic drop, Peter Popoff in the 70s and the 80s on television telling you the only way you're going to be healed is if you have enough faith. We've heard this a million times. And then he gets exposed as he becomes a multimillionaire because he's on stage and his wife's out in the audience getting information from people and feeding it to his ear. And he's like, it's like, this is people saying, if you don't get healed, it's all on you. And here's this guy, he gets asked, hey, what do you want? D.A. Carson, who's this great New Testament scholar, here's what he says. This verse reads less like an apt and subtle response to Jesus' question when he says, do you want to be healed? And the guy's like, well, no one can help me. More as a crotchety grumbling of an old and not very perceptive man who thinks he's answering a stupid question. It's like, he's not full of Christological, perfected faith in the finished work of the crucified and risen, and he only has so much of it, and then he gets healed. He doesn't even know who he's talking to. God moves first. Jesus moves on him, not because the guy's faith could do enough, because that puts the onus back on you. And how many people have I watched struggle under the weight and the burden of that kind of theology that says if you got problems in your life, it's all because of you. That's called karma. That's not Christianity. Jesus moves and heals not based on the guy's amount of faith. There are moments in the New Testament where that does matter. And sometimes in our life, that might actually be a thing, but that's not this. This guy doesn't even know who he's talking about. And here's what's beautiful about it. To come back to why Jesus doesn't heal more and more and more. Listen, in verse 14 of the same story, afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, see, you're well. Listen to this, guys, listen to this. Some of you, all you're looking for is a physical healing. All you're looking for is that God fix my bank account. All you're looking for is give me this temporal success in this moment, this worldly thing, solve my problems. And then we ask the question, why only 36? Listen to this. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you. Wait a minute. You heal my disease, which I think is my biggest problem. 38 years and sitting in my own stuff. Then you walk up to me 20 minutes later and you tell me that actually I got a bigger problem, which is sin. Some of us sitting around thinking we're going to solve all our problems by solving all this temporal stuff. And Jesus is going, guys, there's worse things than having a disease. That nothing worse may happen to you. Verse 14, dying and going to a Christless eternity without your sin solved by the cross and the resurrection of Jesus is far worse than the temporal problems that you face in this world. That's what he's trying to tell this guy, and that's why there's only 36, because every single one of these people went on to die again. They're not walking around. You can't go, this guy's not on Twitter. He's dead. Because Jesus wanted to solve his actual problem, his deeper problem, the thing we all need solved, our sin, our emotional, spiritual well-being solved by the person and the work of Jesus. And we get that wrong when we only focus on the temporal things that are right in front of us that are going to make the next 3 months good. And Jesus is working on a far bigger picture. So Lord, give us the perspective that in those moments you are alive and well and transforming and healing and calling us, inviting every single one of us into a story where we get to talk of the glory of God in the midst of pain, in the midst of difficulty, not in spite of it. And that in those moments, we would see them as opportunities for the advancement of the gospel, and therefore we commit ourselves to be vulnerable, to be broken vessels in front of people, to invite people in, to not be afraid of it, to let them see the glory and the beauty and the bigness and the goodness of you, not in our goodness, but in the midst of our brokenness. Literally what this story does. Let our lives reflect it. And those who haven't trusted you yet, Jesus, to solve their sin, that they would do that right now, in this moment. They would give their life to you. Solve my sin. Thank you for dying on the cross, shedding your blood for my sin, rising again from death to save me from my sin. Save me from myself. Save me from the thing that separates me from God forever. Let me receive that gift and that forgiveness. Do that work among us. Every person watching this, listening to this, do your miracles among us. In Jesus' great name we pray. Amen.
Hold me now in the hands that created the heavens. Find me now where the grace runs as deep as your scars. You pulled me from the clay. You set me on a rock. You called me by your name and made my heart whole again. Lifted up, and my knees know it's all for your glory. That I might stand with
Thank you for joining us today. So wonderful to see so many people transformed into fully devoted followers of Jesus.
And if you're somebody who's looking to partner with us financially, you can go to thisisvillagechurch.com/give, or better yet, you can text Village Church to 77977. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time.